So this is my favorite part, you know it is, and that is speaking one-on-one and seeing the person I've just interviewed on The Ageless Traveler. Now, in this case, it's Heidi Beierle, and you already know her because you've listened to the podcast. And please do. She's the author of the book, Heidi Across America. And this took place about 13 years ago. She actually bicycled from Wyoming all the way to Washington, D.C., and everything in between. And you've heard a lot of her really inspirational stories, expressions, and the things that she would like for the future. But now we get a little bit more personal. So, Heidi, the idea of climate change in the tourism world has a fancy name. The name is sustainable tourism. Isn't that nice? So, sustainable tourism. So, you're a big fan of looking at the environment and making sure we've preserved it. Tell us a little bit about that and how you got to be so interested in that area or aspect of tourism.
So I think my developing sense of caring for the environment came from this unique growing up experience that I had, where I grew up in a passive solar house. And so the idea of environmental conservation and was actually just part of how I absorbed growing up. And then when I moved to Eugene, Oregon, I was very taken by the just the ease of biking around. And I was also a vegan for a while, for 12 years. And I was really interested in the climate footprint that eating a plant-based diet afforded. And later, when I quit being vegan, I think I sort of transferred that principle to my transportation and how I got around. And as far as tourism goes, I started to be very interested in people are making these sustainable tourism pockets or destinations, but they're not really considering the impacts of how people are getting there. And that seemed to me a really important part of
missing link, really a missing link in sustainability. Yes, you're absolutely right.
And for just looking at the tourism world and where the carbon comes from, and also just in our daily lives and where the carbon comes from. And transportation is really high in the tourism industry. 49% of the carbon emissions come from travel transportation. And in our daily lives, about 29% of carbon emissions come from mostly personal vehicles. And that's actually a pretty high percentage as far as things go. So I think agriculture and buildings are other ones that are high up there. So I just started to geek out about the travel transportation part of it and try to conceptualize what tourism of the future could look like as we're having more and more climate related weather extremes, and it also affects how those weather elements affect how we can get around. So my slow travel model is looking at how do we think about transportation in the greater scheme of things, and recognize also that sometimes we do want to take an airplane, and how do we balance that out? Or sometimes we actually need to have a car, maybe because we're not able to get around other ways. So like how do we make some room and allowance for all these things at the same time, while we're still contemplating, like, how do we have these transformative experiences that travel brings about? And another part of that I got very excited about recently is that in order to be out walking or biking or paddling or whatever it happens to be, if you're traveling more domestically, and this could even be further away too, but having the opportunity to escape a weather event by using something like a train or renting a car or something like that. So figuring out ways to make the options for transportation more integrated, so people have escape valves. But
there's some good news here. First of all, the idea of sustainability is fairly new in the whole world of tourism. If you look at tourism actually starting somewhere in our style of tourism, somewhere in the 1800s, when people took the grand tour and actually traveled for other than business reasons. So this is fairly new. It's a blip on the screen. It's just beginning. Certainly every country has looked at emissions. Every country has looked at their air situation. But one of the things that the US is thinking about, and this to me is fascinating because it's the confluence of tourism, transportation, and lifestyle, is longer vacations. Think about this for a minute. Why do people have to take the plane? Because it's faster and they don't have a lot of days to see Milan. So how do they get there? Can they get on a ship, which can be better for transportation, although that has to be looked at too, and go like they used to across the Atlantic? No, they can't. You could go to Vancouver, from Vancouver to Japan easily by boat, except that it takes 6 days, and that's the end of your vacation the minute you get to Japan. So if we had longer vacations, we could do more slow travel. And that's actually an HR issue. So people don't see this incredible connection between almost everything we do and our ability to travel the world. But it's coming, and it is really just beginning, and that's a wonderful thing. Another thing that I wanted to ask you about is we talked about the transformation of our planet. How about the transportation of Heidi Beierle? You did share with us that when you started this work, you were not a happy camper. They say that literally and figuratively. It was not a great time in your life. And things are a hell of a lot better now. So how much do you attribute to your slow travel, and what's changed?
I feel like there are so many different levels of this. On the surface, I was like, oh, that didn't really work. The recession still had like this long lasting
It's still there.
Effect, and it didn't materialize the job of my dreams in the way I had hoped. But I went out and had a lot of slow travel experiences. I was definitely on my bike an awful lot, and part of why this story during this journey was that in addition to this realization about America, and finding a place in my heart for just my nation, really the people and the place, was I found a place in my heart for myself, which I wasn't at all expecting. That part of feeling down and bad and negative was, because I was withholding love from myself, and I didn't realize that until I was kind of faced with, like, well, are you going to kill yourself by going out into this heat and keep pedaling? And why would you do that when everybody else in the world seems to like care about you? Why don't you care about yourself in the same way? So that was really impactful for me. And I can't say that, it's been like, oh, I understood what it was to love myself, and then everything has been dandy since then. I've gone through phases where I've had to remind myself, and actually writing this book, I had to really re-engage with that. I was like, oh, I'm struggling around this. Like it was the pandemic also,
Sure. You pick great. Your timing is impeccable, by the way. You really never let a crisis leave you behind. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's these these inflection points, or these stresses in life, and I also feel like there's a real timing to how this whole process has unfolded for me, so that I could actually use these these challenging times to like leapfrog off of them. And as I've been talking to people about my story, I've been kind of like, oh, boo-hoo, the school thing didn't work. And, I had to figure something else out. But I'm like, and I wrote this book, which I think was probably more the thing that I was interested in doing than becoming an active transportation planner. And it just took the time it needed to take for me to have the experiences. And I do believe that slow travel is part of like a daily remedy for me in like connecting with who I am, connecting with the world around me, reminding myself that I'm not alone, that I'm part of this, larger community of beings and life, and choosing to see the connection and the beauty even in the ugly things, I think has been hugely transformative for me. Not just when I was writing, but as I've been writing.
It is for me, and listening to you is transformative on a very, very personal level. I'll tell you what, I get criticized. What am I criticized for? I spend a lot of time traveling personally. I had spent a lot of time creating media that has to do with travel. And I'm in the field of aging. I was a lawyer. People say, wait a minute, Adrienne, isn't there something better you can do with your time than help people who have the money to travel better? Is that really your legacy? And that's because they don't get what I think travel is. I think travel is transformative, not only for yourself, but for the world. It sounds very preachery and everybody can snicker, but the fact is, when you get out there and you meet other people, they are also meeting you. They are also meeting you. And what you bring to the table, in our case, as an older person, in my case, 75 plus, and many of my listeners are younger than that, but they have experience. They're getting there. Other people are seeing them. They are enhancing the environment. They are enhancing the sustainable development because they're spending money. So that's good for jobs. They are meeting other people so that they're getting enriched like you did. But I think more importantly, they're enriching other people by getting to know who we are. Because our brand, in other words, what we sell as US is we are the home of the free, very beautiful. We are the home of the brave. We're not the home of the loving. And that's not true. And when you see an older person who's hiking, who's biking, who's got a younger person in tow, who's taking care of themselves in the world, it makes it easier for you to get old. I'm actually crying here. It makes it easier for you to get old. It makes it less afraid. And you say, you know what, I could be like them one day. Got to get out there and show yourself and not be only on the pickleball court. They don't see, only a few people see you on the pickleball court. Like, get out, play pickleball someplace else. So that's my pitch. And there are people like you who actually have had the guts to write about it. I have not. I speak about it once in a while. So now we go to our last question, because now I've made everybody cry. What's next? What are you going to do now?
Yeah, I have a sequel memoir that I've been working on that is, coming along. We'll see if the experience that I'm on right now of being out on my book tour factors into that. I am also working on interviewing people about equitable access to the outdoors, and hopefully we'll have something put together in the near future on that. And in the meantime, I'm sharing the word about slow travel. So happy to have conversation with people, interview. It's, I'm meeting a lot of people. I'm having a lot of conversations. So yeah, that's what I'm working on.
Fantastic. Well, we thank you so much. And everybody, this is my favorite part, but listen to the podcast also, right? Go to agelesstraveler.com. You'll see that on our show notes. I just splashed it on the screen right now. Join our salon. It's on the very first page. And of course, very importantly, never stop traveling.